solutions to meet the FTZ reporting and audit requirements. As I mentioned earlier, only certain specific accounting methodologies are allowed. Those are listed in the regulations. You can apply to headquarters for a special accounting method to be allowed. Sometimes that's a little dangerous because they may come back with an answer that makes it tougher than your accounting system was in the first place. But what you need to think about when making a decision on how to meet these requirements of whether to modify your software or purchase the software is what's most cost efficient and what's best for your company. And the biggest challenge I've seen in companies, when I started doing this, it was no off-the-shelf system. Everybody had to modify their existing systems. And the toughest battle was that they didn't have the internal knowledge to make these changes. So they ended up needing a consultant there a lot of the time, a lot of hours to make sure they programmed it correctly. And there's a couple of really good systems out there that they built themselves. But it's also a challenge because they have to change those systems. I think we all know with the environment of ACE and all the changes that are coming down, nowadays it's quite a challenge, and I would hate to have to go to my IT system almost on a weekly basis and say, oh, by the way, ISA just changed again. We need to change this, that, or the other thing. But some companies choose this path because they want everything to look the same that you log on to. The other choice is purchasing an off-the-shelf system or a package system. If that's a better solution, you ought to, some things you need to consider is, one, you want to make sure it's compliant. You want to consider support. You want to consider the FTZ knowledge and real-world experience that the designers of the software have to help the programmers. You also want to consider the platform and what's the overall best fit for your company. So I think that's it for mine. Although it's a pretty high-level view, it's a really high-level view of how to get from point A to point B on the savings. But what the savings are, hopefully I covered that in enough to give everybody a good idea.
Great. Thank you very much, Craig, for the presentation. Our next speaker is Amy Ahachian, and I do hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Hi, everyone. You did. Don't worry.
Great. Amy's been a speaker of NEXCO in a similar webinar that we did last year. And Amy, I welcome you again. I will get her presentation up in a moment, but I would like to introduce her. Amy is Senior Manager with KPMG LLP's Trade and Customs Practice. She's based in Washington, D.C., and is a licensed U.S. Customs broker with more than 10 years of experience advising multinational companies on duty-saving strategies, global import and export compliance matters, and international trade remedies. She is also a member of the National Association of Foreign Trade Zones, as well as a member of Washington International Trade Association and the Customs and International Trade Bar Association. She is as I said, a licensed customs broker. She received her BS from Trinity University and her JD from the University of Texas. I welcome you, Amy, and Amy, I will get your slides presentation up in just a moment.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Amy, once your presentation comes up, you should be able to move the slides using the large arrow. Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Craig, also for the first part of the presentation. It was very informative. Today, I'm going to be taking, building off of what Craig said, and just focusing more on foreign trade zones for the retail and distribution industry. Skip over the disclaimer. Okay, so I'm just skipping ahead to the Foreign Trade Zone program overview, and I'm going to just hit the point that Craig maybe didn't cover just in the interest of time. But essentially, foreign trade zones, as you guys know, they're carved out of the U.S. Customs territory. They must be within or adjacent to a customs port of entry. And within a foreign trade zone, you can pretty much do any function almost that you can do if the facility is not a foreign trade zone. And again, we're speaking about distribution facilities in this part of the presentation. So that would include warehousing, any sort of testing, inspecting, quality control, value-added services, kitting, and even manufacturing, if that makes sense for that type of operation. And, with this example, the foreign trade zone is in the midwestern part of the United States. And if it's a distribution center facility, the foreign trade zone operator could import dutiable components, parts, or products into the foreign trade zone without it being in the customs territory of the United States. And then we can export any of those same products or parts from the foreign trade zone without paying any customs duties or fees at all. Or, like Craig mentioned, we can destroy products within the foreign trade zone and not pay customs duties, or even ship them in bonded status to another foreign trade zone, and similarly avoid those payments of customs duties and fees. What we would pay customs duties on is merchandise that's entered into the customs territory of the United States from the foreign trade zone. Skip over this part. Okay, so what makes this topic exciting now today for retailers and distributors? And mostly that's been the changes that have happened recently. As you guys know, for the first 75 years, foreign trade zones, while they were a great program, they had somewhat limited benefits for companies that were strictly engaging in distribution activity. And then in 2000, President Clinton signed the Trade Development Act, which made foreign trade zone weekly entry procedures available to all FTZs. Before that, service providers had to actually request that as an authorization from customs. But after the year 2000, those weekly entry procedures were available for everybody. And along the same time frame, many service providers started to develop their own automated foreign trade zone inventory control and record-keeping systems, which are really designed to help companies accurately track receipts and shipments, exports, scrap, all different types of transactions that were happening within the foreign trade zone on a very large volume basis. And that really made it easier for a lot of companies to start setting up foreign trade zones. And I believe that those developments were key for opening the door to distribution companies and also retailers for participation in the FTZ program. And similarly, for companies that were importing footwear and apparel products, while those products have historically been subject to high customs duty rates, as you guys know, they historically did not benefit so much from duty deferral benefits that were available to other foreign trade zones. And the reason for this, mostly with respect to apparel, is that a lot of textile and apparel products that are imported into the U.S. are under quota categories in the harmonized tariff classification system. And the customs regulations specifically say that not only is quota merchandise or merchandise that had a textile visa associated with it, it's not considered low risk. So when companies were applying for that direct delivery procedure that you heard about, quota category and textile visa category merchandise was not available to be imported under those direct delivery procedures. That's one aspect to this. But the other aspect is that you also could not use quota merchandise for weekly entries. So that, together with previously in a lot number environment when you weren't using FIFO, the quota merchandise had to be segregated. So those things added an additional burden for companies that were importing textile and apparel products into foreign trade zones. So they really weren't able to avail themselves to those benefits until recently when quota went away. So in addition to apparel and textile products that are imported into FTZ distribution companies, there are a number of other industries that, if you look at the Foreign Trade Zones Board list of foreign trade zone subzones for distribution, a lot of companies in these industries are currently taking advantage of FTZ benefits today. So we talked a little bit about apparel and footwear, but there are also FTZs for sporting equipment, home furnishings, jewelry, all types of consumer goods and consumer electronics, in addition to a number of industrial products and vehicle parts and heavy equipment, and swimwear, beach accessories, and tires. So you can really see the diversity in foreign trade zones being operated around the country with respect to the industries that are benefiting from foreign trade zones and the types of products that are being imported and distributed from those foreign trade zones. So now we'll move on to the benefits of operating a foreign trade zone, and we'll start with the economic benefits. You guys know about the tariff inversion that can be available with either a manufacturing scenario or, hypothetically, with a kitting scenario. If you took two different parts that were at a higher duty rate and combined them into a kit within the foreign trade zone and entered that into U.S. commerce, that could conceivably lower or reduce the duties payable on the final product for retail sale. Again, you also are available to eliminate customs